All right, welcome back. So, we made it. Talon is going to be playing at TI11. They probably didn't qualify in the way that I think a lot of people were expecting them to have qualified to TI11 back in November of 2021 when this team got announced, but they made it. And I'm here to give you guys a brief little review on everything that happened in the past DPC season and what you can maybe expect from this team heading into TI11. But before we get into any of that, I feel like it's important to address the context surrounding this team, even before the DPC season actually started, because heading into this new season, after the hype of TI10 had died down, I don't think there was a single team in any region, any division whatsoever that had more hype behind it than Talon heading into this season. Not only was it a massive esports organization making its debut into the Dota 2 Pro circuit, but they were doing so with such a mega star-studded roster featuring veteran players like KP, Fly, who had just left Evil Geniuses, also bringing in Gabby, Makoto, and Q. This was a roster that, even though they were going to have to come in through open qualifiers, this was a roster that down the line should be competing for major titles, and by the end of the season, maybe they would be one of the top contending teams for the Aegis of Champions at the next TI. And ultimately, it's kind of not what ended up happening. The hype would suggest that was the case, and I still think my announcement video for this team is my most viewed video on my channel still to this day. Yeah, there was a lot of hype surrounding this team. I think especially the whole Fly thing, leaving Evil Geniuses, joining this team really helped. But regardless, this team kind of struggled pretty hard out of the gate, and maybe it's something that we should have seen coming. Again, as I mentioned earlier, these guys had to come in through the open qualifiers, and they didn't exactly have a smooth run through the open qualifiers, which is not something you would expect from a team that has such a roster like this. It actually took them multiple attempts to get in. I believe they got beat out by Lil Gun, or Ragdoll, I believe, ended up making it in before them. Regardless, they do make it into the lower division, and despite the fact that they maybe struggled, maybe they're having an off day, this is a pretty fresh roster, maybe they just need some time to adjust. By the time the season starts, by the time tour number 1 starts, these guys will be good to go, and they should finish at least top 2. And then they end up finishing 5th place overall, and the roster kind of falls apart from there. So anyways, before we get into that though, Talon finishes the DPC season with 300 DPC points total. They finished 3rd place regionally, 21st place internationally. So they were pretty far off from top 12. They weren't going to exactly make it off of points, but feels important to address that regardless. And as of right now, they are the 3rd team to be attending TI from Southeast Asia. We'll see if any of the Southeast Asian teams make it through the last chance qualifiers, but for now, there will be at least 3 teams from Southeast Asia attending TI. This roster has undergone some changes throughout the past year. Again, previously having Gabby and Fly on the team, they have since replaced them with 23 Savage and Hyde. 23 Savage, again, coming off of a fantastic run at TI10 and a first tour with T1. Things unfortunately didn't work out with them all that well, so he ends up getting picked up by Talon. So, things didn't work out with the first star-studded roster on Talon. Why not bring in some more insane talent? And this time it really clicked. It really felt like 23 Savage was the piece that they needed on this team. Again, as previously mentioned, Makoto playing mid, KP did stick around, Q playing position 4, and Hyde playing position 5. And for the coach, we have Always Wanna Fly. For their furthest runs at any TI, of course, 23 Savage, his best run was finishing 7th and 8th place with T1 at TI10. KP finishes 2nd place, of course, back at TI7 with Newbie. This will be his 6th international, so a very long and successful career for KP, but he's still looking for that 1st place title. And the only other member of the team that has actually competed at TI up to this point is their coach, Always Wanna Fly, who finished 9th to 12th place at TI8. I believe that was with Windstrike. However, he has not been at the TI as a coach. This will be his first time, so we'll see how it goes. As for the rest of them, Makoto and Hyde both finished 3rd place in the TI10 qualifiers last year. That is the closest they ever got. And Q finished 7th and 8th place in those TI10 qualifiers as well. So this will be all of their first TIs. Super exciting, again, with all the momentum that is with this team. So again, taking a look at these results, as I previously alluded to at first, Tour 1 did not exactly go their way. They actually finished in 5th place. They don't even finish in the top half of the lower division of Southeast Asia. They finished with a 3-4 record, and it is immediately clear that things need to change. And they do. They bring in 23 Savage, they bring in Hyde, and things turn around very quickly. They miss out on the regional finals, of course, because they were in the lower division. So second tour, they finished second place. They only dropped one series, that was to RSG, who would end up finishing first place in that division. But regardless, they finished top 2, 6-1 record, good enough to get them to the upper division, where in tour 3, they would make it all the way up towards the top of the division, almost finishing first place. I believe they just lost their tiebreaker match to Boom. Had they won that, they would have finished first place in the division, which is a stark contrast to how the DPC season started for this organization. Regardless, second place finish, 6-1 record. They earned themselves 300 DPC points, which at this point in the season, it's probably too late for them. Even if they win first place at the major, I don't think it would have been enough points for them to make it to TI just off of points. But regardless, it is still nice. And luckily for them, they didn't need to rely on that because their time at Arlington Major was a bit of a fallback for them. It felt like that they just weren't really ready to play against some other teams from other regions to that point, and they really struggled in that Arlington Major, being one of only a few teams to get knocked out in the group stage. So taking a look at some matches that these guys have played over the past DPC season in the DPC against other teams attending TI. This is going to be including teams that are also in the last chance qualifiers. So Polaris and T1 are listed here as well. For Tour 1, the only team that they actually played in that tour that will be at least having a chance at playing at TI this year was Polaris. They lost that series 2-1. That was their old roster. Everything past that point has been with the new roster. And in Tour 3, they start off by beating Polaris 2-1. They take down Boom 2-1. They lose a series to Fnatic, which would end up being a series that dropped them down so that they were tied with Boom. They would lose that tiebreaker match 2-1. They would beat T1 2-0 there as well, which T1 is a team that Talon seems to have got their number. Even in the qualifiers, they did quite well against them. However, again, as previously alluded to, they did struggle a lot at Arlington. They lose their first series to PSG LGD 2-0. They draw against Thunderwaken 1-1. They then lose to Outsiders. The only series that they win in all of Arlington was against Sonics. They then lose to RNG. They tie Liquid and Fnatic, and finally they lose to OG. And they get eliminated in the group stage, which means not enough points to qualify. They have to come in through the SEA qualifiers, which luckily for them, they were able to, and they made it look pretty easy all the way up until the grand finals. Grand finals was pretty close, but to that point, they beat Polaris on the way 2-0. They then beat T1 2-0. That was a very close series, but the score really doesn't reflect it all that much. And then Polaris, they managed to make that comeback in the grand finals, and they win that series 3-2 over them to qualify to TI. So in total, 41 games played against other teams attending this year's International, 20-21 records, so just under 50%. Taking a look at some stats now for drafting and hero orientation. In this case, I have taken the stats from every single match that they've played in the DPC this season, not just teams against TI11. This gives me a much broader spectrum to look at when it comes to these games. So we can get a little bit more of a feel for what this team would be looking forward to. I know that in my last video for Hokori, I just did the stats against other teams attending TI. That's great and all, but given the fact that those matches are generally going to be tougher, it is harder to find where the strengths are with the teams in that case. So for Talon, over these 81 games, they finished with a 48-33 record, which in comparison to the teams against that are also going to be attending TI is pretty different. On Radiant, they went 23-20 for a 53% win rate. On Dire, however, they had a pretty fantastic win rate at 65% over 37 games. On First Pick, they were 22-17 for a 56% win rate, and on Last Pick, 25-16. For a combination of the two, Radiant First Pick was actually the only orientation in which they had a sub 50% win rate, where they went 13-15. On Radiant Second Pick, they went 10-5. Dire First Pick, they went 9-2. They did not play that orientation very much, but whenever they did pretty damn well on it. And for Dire Last Pick, they went 15-11. For games less than 40 minutes, they were 23-20, and for games over 40 minutes, they were 25-13. So obviously, in this case, games that were a little bit longer, Talon seemed to do a little bit better in. And obviously, that is a huge effect from 23 Savage being on the team, because he is just that hard carry player that will take you to the late game and he will beat you. And funny enough, that is actually the opposite to how their tour started. If you look at their matches that they were playing in Tour 1 with Gabby and Fly, they were winning the really, really fast matches and losing the longer ones. It felt like the longer those games went on, the more those cracks in the foundation of the team started to show, and they would start to lose those series. So pretty stark difference there from Tour 1 onwards. For game ones, they were 22-12, so they always started off their series pretty well. It tells me that this team usually came in to a series pretty well prepared for their opponent, which is maybe why they struggled quite a bit in the group stage, because it's a lot of matches in very short succession, as opposed to in the DPC Tour where you have usually one match a week. In game twos, they were 18-16, so a little bit more even, and in game threes, 6-5. So their main strength has been starting off strong in a series, and so heading into this year's international, watch out for Talon winning game ones. If they start to lose game ones, that might spell a little bit of a mess for Talon, and they'll have to bounce back in the next one. And for average GPM, this team has an average GPM of 2311, XPM 2823, an average KDA of 3.94, and an average match duration of 40 minutes and 22 seconds. Finally, for some hero stats, these guys played a total of 86 different heroes over those 81 games, of which the most picked were Death Prophet with 18, Tiny with 16, Bane with 15, Ember Spirit 14, Puck 13, and Mars and Marcy tied with 12 picks each over those 81 games. For their best heroes, none other than Faceless Void, shocker. Not only is the hero incredibly strong right now, but that is also a 23 Savage Classic, 9-1 on that hero in the 10 games that it was picked. Slark, 4-0, that was one of the more notable heroes that Talon was picking quite a bit, especially in the qualifiers, and Storm Spirit and Weaver with a 5-1 record. For worst heroes, we have Winter Wyvern, who is 1-3, Terrorblade, who is 2-5, and Tiny, who is 6-10, which was one of their most played heroes. Did not have that same level of success as some of the other heroes here. And for the most banned in total, Talon banned a total of 100 heroes over these 81 games. The hero that got the most was Pangolier with 26, Beastmaster with 24, and finally Viper with 20. Two of those three heroes, mainly Beastmaster and Viper, are heroes that are incredibly strong in the offlane and put a lot of pressure on the safe lane, which is something pretty notable for 23 Savage, that they were directly trying to target offlaners that would get 23 Savage off to a rough start. They want to make sure 23 Savage is able to get that strong start, because if he does, he will be able to carry you, and that is something that Talon has been able to exploit, and that is a big reason as to why Talon has made it to TI. So, things to look out for. Game ones, pretty big thing for Talon. Again, as previously mentioned, they usually come into a series very well prepared. They get off strong, and that is a big reason as to why they are able to come ahead with a series, because they can get off to that strong start. Drafting is a strength. Again, knowing their strengths in the draft, knowing to give 23 Savage a good game. That is why a lot of these carry heroes are some of the best heroes that Talon have had over this past year. One thing I am concerned about is the group stage, mainly the fact that they're going to be having to play a lot of matches in short succession, something that they really struggled with in Arlington. Will they be able to pick up and do a little bit better this time, especially with the teams playing at TI? These teams are not going to be taking things lightly. They're going to be bringing their A game, and so Talon is going to have to address that. They cannot afford to get up to a rough start in the group stage again. And yeah, other than that, Talon, they made it to TI one way or another, and I'm super stoked to see how they do. Again, 23 Savage, big TI player, or I'm expecting big things from him. But for the rest of the team as well, KP, veteran, he's been here before. This is his 6th international, as I previously mentioned. So yeah, we'll see how they do. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. How far do you think Talon makes it in this year's international? Do you think they'll struggle in the group stage once again, or do you think they'll overcome it and end up in the upper bracket of the main stage? You guys can let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. My next preview will be going up very shortly. I can't remember off the top of my head who that's going to be, but it is going to be one of the other teams that came in through their regional qualifiers. It might be Sonics, but I could be wrong. Either way, be on the lookout for that. Every team attending TI is going to get a video just like this one. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.